In this video, we are going to discuss the determinants of price elasticity of demand. There are some key determinants that is going to define whether the good is actually elastic or inelastic, and let's look at that one by one. The first one being the close substitutes of a product. The substitutes are the goods which can be used in place of one another. The goods which have close substitutes are said to have elastic demand, such as tea and coffee. So, if the price of the tea increases, then people will switch to the coffee and the demand for the tea will decrease significantly. Whereas, when they are, so this would be elastic. Whereas, when there are no close substitutes like salt and sugar, in this case there are no close substitutes, so even if the price of salt is going to increase, it will be staying inelastic because the demand might not decrease significantly because there are no close substitutes. The second point being is the amount of money spent. The elasticity of demand for a product is determined by the proportion of income spent by the individual on that product. In case of certain goods such as matchbox, a consumer might actually spend a very small amount of his income, maybe 2 to 5 rupees. So even if there is a price rise, the demand for these kind of products will not be affected to a great extent. Thus, the demand for such product is said to be inelastic. Whereas clothing, food are the items where an individual spends a major proportion of his income, and therefore if there is any change in prices of these items, the demand will get affected. The third one is the nature of the good. So the elasticity of demand also depends on the nature of the commodity. The product can be categorized into luxury good or necessary good. So necessities of life such as clothing and food is said to be inelastic as their demand cannot be postponed. Whereas if it's a luxury good, it's said to be highly elastic. So you have necessities which would be inelastic, and you have luxury good which is elastic. So if there is a price increase, there would be significantly decreasing demand. However, the point to note that is that there are some goods like prestigious good which is also said to be inelastic, because when the price increases for a prestigious good, there might be a demand also increasing. So here we are talking about luxury good, not prestigious good. The price elasticity of demand for an item is affected by the time horizon over which demand is calculated, because the consumers generally have more flexibility over long time periods. It stands to reason that elasticity tends to be larger over longer time horizons over shorter time periods. For example, if you take the petrol price over the next month is likely to be inelastic because the consumers demand for petrol over next year, which tend to be elastic. The reason is that when we are stuck with a particular car or particular job or a living place in a shorter time period, we do not have the ability to change it, so it would be inelastic. In the shorter time period, we will be using the same car. But if the time is going to, if there's a longer period of time, for example, if the price of oil is going to change in the next year, we have the time to adjust by buying a more economical car or moving closer to work or school or university. So in that case, the prices of petrol might be elastic. So here in shorter period, it might be inelastic, and for longer time horizons, it's said to be elastic. So this is a key determinant also. And the fifth one would be the several users of a commodity. The elasticity of demand depends on the number of users of a commodity. So if a commodity is used only for a single purpose, then the change in the price will affect the demand for a commodity only in that use. Thus, the demand for that commodity is said to be inelastic. Whereas if the product has several users such as raw materials like coal, iron and steel, etc., then the change in their price will affect the demand for these commodities in its many uses. Thus, the demand for such products is said to be elastic. And the final one would be the specificity of a good. So how well it is being defined? So in general, the more broadly a good is defined, the lower the price elasticity of demand is. This observation is actually very close to the substitute effect also. For example, when considering the elasticity of a narrowly defined product, for example, if you take a narrowly defined product, such as we take Honda Civic car, this might have several substitutes. So people might switch from Honda Civic to another car. But if the commodity is broadly defined, like say car in general, then the consumers might not switch entirely from car itself. So how specifically the good is demand, it determines the price elasticity of demand.